Hi friends, I am OmnusI, here in my lair. You're here with me for another RPGaDay video. Today is the 28th, only a few more days left of August. I know, we're almost done. And today the topic word is, depending on your interpretation, close or close. So close, of course, close. The end of August is close. Here I feel like I am close to you. You're seeing me talk and everything like that. So, we can be conversational about this. And if you want to talk, just comment and I will respond quickly. But, more to the point, close. The idea of shutting something, to wrap it up, to finish it off. I always have felt that it was important in any story to have a good ending. Not necessarily a happy ending. Sometimes an ending can be appropriately dramatic, maybe even melodramatic. But it should come to an end. I'm not fond of the idea of a never-ending story. The movie notwithstanding. The idea that a story has a beginning, a middle, and end. Now, I know that some people have continued stories that have gone on and on and on and on and on. Many of those are in terms of things like role-playing games, where a campaign just never stops. Characters die, but new ones take their place. Sometimes new people are added in, sometimes people drop out. There are campaigns that have told a continuous story on and on and on and on and on. And I always kind of think to myself when I hear about those, wow, that's a lot of commitment. Somebody has really been driven to keep going with this for all this time. That's impressive and a little sad, quite honestly. You'll never have closure. If you were there from the very beginning, you have lots of smaller endings as your characters have died and you've introduced new ones, but it just, as you continue to explore the world and continue to destroy monsters and leave your imprint on the world and do, cool and incredible things to the scope that nobody who hasn't been in that campaign will ever be able to fully appreciate. Ultimately, you kind of rob the people who are participating in it without some wrap-up. Just to say, hey, this was a great story. We've got all these great stories, and our story had a beginning, and now it's got an end to it. I would not want to be in an eternal campaign. I just have the idea that I could participate in something like that, but ultimately I would have an end to it, how far along I want it to be. If my net goal was to destroy this dragon, then I'd be happy with that. You guys are going to keep going? That's cool. I'm going to go do something else. Because again, like I said last session with Favor, I do have games that I enjoy tremendously, and I want to keep going back to them. But I love diversity, and I love doing different things, and I have so many stories in my head that ultimately games have to have an ending to me. And I think that really that's putting your finishing stamp on something and really crystallizing it in your group's memory. I think it's important. And I've always kind of had that. I always had something in mind for the ending of every campaign that I've ever run. I've never tried to run a forever game. I'm not interested. My stories have ends to them. Usually it's a happy ending. A couple times have been kind of bittersweet. But generally I want my players to know that by the time it's done, it's done. We're not going back to it. Those characters can be fully retired. They're not going to go adventuring together again. And I've only backtracked on that idea twice. That I took some old characters and allowed people to play them again. And one time was a complete disaster. Complete disaster. And the group tore itself apart. But there were a lot of extenuating circumstances there, so it wasn't pretty. But anyhow, that was certainly a thing. I think that things drawn to a close are a complete story. Without that, it's just a tale. It's just something that goes on and on and on. But a full story, beginning, middle, end, it's necessary. And along the way, lots of little closures. You know, there's climaxes, resolution, building to another climax, resolution, building to another climax. That's the way we appreciate and honestly consume entertainment, is to only have so long. You've been in a movie before, right? Where the movie just went on and on and on, and you're like, this could have been an hour and a half, and it's 2.5 hours and we're not done yet? If you've been in that kind of movie, you know what I'm talking about. Things have a natural progression, and they should have some element of closure in most cases. If you choose not to do that, that's fine. That's your game and everything, but sometimes that's healthy. And even if you end it and you can go right into another campaign, even in the same world with a different story arc, that's cool. That's still cool. I think that still counts as valid as a closure and a fresh start. And I think it's good to have fresh starts as much as it is to have, you know, proper ends. So as we are drawing closer and closer towards September and an end of the RPGaDay, I think it's important, as I do with any of my campaigns that I've ended, to look back on, you know, what we did and what we've talked about. And in the case of this one, I've generally tried to stick fairly close to talking about game design and elements of gameplay through the filter of my own game. I've talked about the different branches of the game and all the different ways that the mechanics of my game allow you to experience different stories depending on what kind of lenses and filters you want to use, what you want to explore in your games, what you wish to take away, and what you want to leave behind and maybe never use. Tons of options and things so that people can play just the game they want using the same relative system. And ultimately, it's ambitious, but I think that if you got a chance to play it, you might be able to find a few things in it that you really enjoy. I hope. We have covered, going back through the list, we started at the beginning where I introduced what I was going to do through this whole thing. Change and how, you know, different things are altered and thread, different interweavings of story elements. All of them going through different aspects. You know, sometimes we may have treaded on the same ground a few times, but usually those were elements that I thought were pretty important. And this one, likewise, I also like to think that closure is important. I don't want somebody to play my game exclusively and not play other games as well. Ultimately, there is something that I think is important, and that is to appreciate that people's tastes change. Very few people can stick to one thing all the time. The important thing, I think, in terms of game elements is to give all the tools to make your games memorable, so you give people memories and good experiences. And who knows, maybe even videos and things that have some lasting shareability with other people. But then to take away things. I like to think my game is designed in a smart way that might have elements that people might say, you know, some of those elements I could take to other games. The idea of lenses and filters. If you say applied that to Dungeons & Dragons D20 system, basically you would kind of have the mega damage system from Palladium's Rifts and well, primarily it was Rifts and Robotech, but you had normal SDC, or your structural damage capability, and then you had mega damage, and there the two really mixed. Anything that did mega damage would crush anything that could take structural damage, and nothing that did structural damage could hurt something that could take mega damage. And it was okay. I mean, it certainly accomplished what it needed to, but they don't mix all that well. I like to think DiceFile would have things like that with the lens and filter system. So, you know, getting those things to combine, maybe offering things like push mechanic. You might go, gosh, what if I'm playing D&D, okay, I'm playing D&D, and I really want to succeed at something, but I don't have any inspiration and I don't have any help. Can I get advantage on it if I give myself a level of exhaustion as I push myself? Aha! That's not in D&D as far as I know. But thanks to my game, maybe that would inspire you to add that as a mechanic. Ah, that could certainly be interesting. Honestly, it's unless you have a class that regularly incorporates exhaustion, you'll never use that. If your DM tracks, you know, food and drink, you might not have enough, and you might starve and start getting exhaustion that way. But it's not very common through normal gameplay. But with this, maybe you're going to have characters that are getting exhausted because they are pushing themselves at critical junctures. I really don't want to take that dragon's breath, so I'm going to push myself to get out of the way. It's not just my normal reflexes, it's my reflexes plus I'm willing to hurt myself to not take as much damage from that attack. And I think that's a fair mechanic. I don't think it's a terrible idea, especially since exhaustion can be pretty brutal. So, just some thoughts. Certainly, I hope that anybody who watches my videos takes away something, either entertainment, maybe some ideas of their own, and I hope the same thing for my game. Ultimately, when I have DiceFile or any of its different iterations, Traveling Hat Club, Soul of the City, DiceFile Fantasy, DiceFile Sci-Fi, what have you, I hope that people come away with an idea of either that this was entertaining, this was exciting, this is something I want to do. Maybe some of these ideas were thoughtful. Maybe they don't work for you. Maybe you're afraid that this doesn't sound right. But maybe they made you think a little bit. Hopefully. That's certainly what I'm hoping for here. To uplift, to entertain, and to provide something of real use. And quite honestly, if you followed me all the way up to this point, you yourself could actually play DiceFile within some level of reason, just from what I've described. Yeah, there's a couple of particulars that I haven't outlined just yet, but for the most part, the mechanics, right there for you. I showed you the character sheet. It's 3 boxes on a sheet, really, and just some words. So you could easily recreate that. You could be playing DiceFile yourself if you wanted to. But hopefully when I'm done, it'll be worth the wait. So that's my idea as we get closer to the end. And I always get a little exhausted when I do these because it's 31 videos in a row, for one thing, even though I cram several of them into several days. If you go back and you notice the days that I'm having the same shirt back to back, I didn't keep the same shirt and shoot a couple at a time. But, you know, it does wear on you. I am kind of looking forward to stopping doing the RPGaDay and then going back to my Lair of OmnusI videos and all my critical videos, which need work. I'm launching a new podcast, too. It's called Downstairs Movies. It's my son and I doing movie criticism, talking about not just the movies too, but also the world, the universe the movies build, and things like that. He's a teenager. I'm middle-aged. So it's the generation gap, and we're going to discuss that and how it makes you feel. I'm hoping it lets Alex be a little bit more thoughtful about things too. So, and I hope you enjoy it. It'll be the pilot is already out on Spotify and Anchor, and I'm hoping that they get picked up by Google and Apple Podcasts. That'd be nice. So this is my video for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am OmnusI, and this has been my Lair. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, I'm going to draw this video to a close. Farewell.